Cold wind blew across the fjord. Snow fell over the longships waiting below the hill. On the hill stood a great fire. It was the funeral pyre of High King Eirik Bloodaxe, the ruler of all the north. The flames rose high into the gray sky. The sound of crackling would fill the air. Around the fire, hundreds of warriors stood in silence. They wore furs and iron, faces hard and quiet. No songs were sung, no horns were blown. Only the sound of fire and wind. Eirik had been a strong king. He fought many wars and brought peace among the clans. For 20 winters he ruled with a sharp sword and a fair hand. But now he was gone, and he left no heir. The Jarls stood apart from one another, their eyes cold. Old enemies, hungry for power. Each of them thinking the same thought. Who will wear the iron crown now? When the fire burned low, only ashes remained. The king's crown, black iron, heavy and cracked, lay upon a stone. Some said it was a gift from Odin, meant only for the one chosen by the gods. But the gods were silent. A single raven landed near the crown. It gave a harsh cry that echoed through the valley. Warriors bowed their heads. They all knew the sign, a warning from the Allfather. The High King had gone to Valhalla. His warriors would soon follow. The peace he built was breaking. And so began the war for the Iron Crown. The fire that burned the High King was not yet cold when whispers began to spread across the north. Men spoke of the empty throne in Valgard, and of the Iron Crown that waited for a new ruler. At first, the Jarls spoke softly, with care and respect for the dead. But greed grows quickly in the hearts of men. Before the snow had melted from the king's pyre, every clan had chosen a side. The first to move was Jarl Skorvald of the Wolf clan, a man as fierce as winter itself. His warriors were raised in the cold valleys, their hearts hardened by war and hunger. Skorvald said the gods had tested him all his life and found him worthy. He raised his banner, a gray wolf's head on red cloth, and called his people to arms. The north needs a wolf, he told them, and the wolf needs a crown. Far to the east, the sea carried word to Jarl Astrid of the Raven Isles. She was wise and patient, but her patience was now at its end. The ravens were said to follow her ships, as if Odin himself watched from above. She claimed a vision had come to her in a dream, the iron crown resting upon her brow, the sea calm beneath her feet. Her long ships gathered in dark waters, shields lined along the hulls like scales of a serpent. In the south, Jarl Bjorn Ironside stood by the old stones of his hall, his hand resting on the sword he once swore to the dead king. He did not seek power, yet men came to him for guidance. If war must come, he said, then let it be for honor, not gold. His people followed him not out of fear, but because they trusted his name. Messengers rode through storms, bringing words of war and warning. Villages swore oaths, ships were built, and the sound of blacksmith hammers filled the fjords. The air grew heavy. Even the ravens flew lower, watching. The north was dividing, not by faith or by clan, but by hunger for the Iron Crown. And in the silence of the gods, men prepared to decide their fate with blood and steel. Winter still held the land in its cold hand when the first blood of the Iron War was spilled. Snow covered the valleys like a white shroud, and the fjords were locked in ice. Yet men still sharpened their blades. It began in the port of Skalfjord, a trading village that once served the High King. Its people were simple, fishers, smiths, and merchants. But Skalfjord stood between the lands of Jarl Skorvald and Jarl Astrid, and both claimed it as their own. At dawn, the silence was broken by the sound of war horns. Longships slid across the frozen water, black sails rising against the pale sky. Skorvald's warriors came like wolves, wrapped in fur and iron, axes in hand. They showed no mercy. The smoke of burning houses rose high into the air as the people ran for their lives. By the time Astrid's scouts reached the shore, Skalfjord was nothing but ashes. The old banners had been torn down, and the wolf of Skorvald now flew above the ruins. His men had slaughtered every warrior loyal to the Raven Isles. None were spared, not even the wounded. Word spread quickly. Across the north, men whispered, "The first blood has been spilled." Astrid swore vengeance. Her ships left the harbor within the hour, their oars cutting through black water. She sent ravens to every loyal clan, calling them to war. The calm sea turned to storm, as if the gods themselves had heard her cry. In the south, Jarl Bjorn Ironside watched the smoke rise from afar. He knew what it meant. Once war begins, it does not stop until every man has paid his due. He gathered his warriors, men bound by honor more than greed. We did not seek this, he told them, but we will not run from it. Across the north, blacksmiths worked day and night. Shields were painted, swords reforged, and old oaths renewed. The first village had fallen. The Iron Crown still waited in Volgard, cold, dark, and heavy with promise. And the north, once united, now stood on the edge of a blade. Snow fell heavy over the mountains of Frostheim, an old fortress carved from ice and stone. It stood on a narrow pass between the lands of the Wolf Clan and the Raven Isles, a place of power, guarded for generations. Whoever held Frostheim controlled the northern road to Volgard. Jarl Skorvold knew this. After burning Skalfjord, he sent his army north to claim the fortress. He marched with 500 warriors, men hardened by the cold and driven by his promise that the Iron Crown would soon rest upon his head. But Jarl Astrid was not far behind. Her ships landed at the coast, and her warriors climbed through the blizzard, guided by the light of her ravens. She knew Skorvold would come, and she meant to meet him there. When dawn came, the sky was pale and cruel. The air was still. From the walls of Frostheim, Astrid's archers watched the dark shapes moving below, Skorvold's host marching through the snow. The first clash came at sunrise. Arrows cut through the mist. Shields rose, axes met steel. The sound of war echoed through the valley like thunder. The snow turned red beneath their feet. Skorvold fought at the front, roaring like a beast, his axe breaking shields in two. Astrid moved among her warriors, calm and fierce, her sword flashing like silver fire. For hours they battled, neither side giving ground. The wind howled, carrying the cries of the dying. Men slipped on the frozen ground, blood steaming in the cold air. Then, as the sun broke through the clouds, Astrid gave the order. Her archers loosed burning arrows into the ice bridge below the fortress. Flames burst to life, melting the bridge that Skorvold's men had crossed. The ice cracked. The bridge fell. Hundreds of warriors plunged into the freezing river below. The Wolf Clan broke, pulling back through the storm. Frostheim belonged to the Ravens. That night, Astrid stood upon the walls, watching the northern lights dance over the battlefield. The gods had given her victory, but at a cost. Far away, Skorvold swore an oath of vengeance before his men. He would not stop until Astrid's banner lay in the mud. The war for the Iron Crown was only beginning. The snows of Frostheim had barely settled when the story of Astrid's victory reached the far corners of the north. The people spoke her name with awe, the Raven Queen, chosen by the gods. But in the cold halls of the Wolf Clan, her triumph burned like a wound. Jarl Skorvold sat alone in his longhouse, the firelight flickering against his scarred face. His warriors had returned broken and beaten, their pride torn as badly as their shields. The air was thick with silence, the silence of shame. Outside, the wind howled across the mountains, carrying the cries of the dead. Inside, Skorvold rose from his seat and walked toward the great fire pit. He drew his knife and pressed the blade against his palm. Blood dripped into the flames. "I swear by the blood of my fathers," he said, his voice low but hard as iron. "I will not rest until the Raven Queen's hall burns, and the Iron Crown is mine." His men watched in silence. Then one by one, they stood and cut their palms, letting their blood fall into the fire beside his. The smell of iron filled the room. It was an old oath, the oath of vengeance. Once spoken, it could not be broken without calling doom upon the soul. For 7 nights, the Wolf Clan prepared. The smiths worked without sleep, forging new axes and spears. Women sharpened blades beside the men. Children carried water and food to the warriors. None spoke of fear. Skorvold sent riders to every allied clan. He promised gold, land, and glory to all who stood with him. The war horns of the wolf clan sounded across the valleys once more, calling warriors from near and far. But vengeance is a hungry beast. It takes more than it gives. While Skorvold gathered strength, Jarl Bjorn Ironside watched from the south. He saw how the land bled and how the people suffered. "This war will drown us all," he said quietly. But even he knew, once blood is spilled, it cannot be undone. The wolf had sworn his oath. The raven had claimed her victory. Now, the north waited for the next storm to break. The moon grew full, and the air turned heavy. The fjords lay frozen, silent under the weight of snow, yet beneath that silence, war was breathing. From the west to the east, men gathered. The sound of iron echoed across the land, swords sharpened, shields hammered, armor mended. Every blacksmith's fire burned through the night. Every warrior knew the storm was coming. Jarl Skorvold, the wolf of the north, called his banners once again. From deep valleys and high mountains, clans loyal to him marched in great numbers. They came hungry for battle and revenge. The oath he had sworn spread like fire through the land, a promise of glory or death. Across the sea, Jarl Astrid of the Raven Isles stood upon her ship as it cut through the dark waves. Her fleet stretched far behind her, black sails rising like wings. The cold wind bit at her face, but she did not flinch. She had won Frostheim, yet she knew Skorvold would come. "The wolf will howl again," she told her captains. "Let him come. The ravens will feast." In the south, Jarl Bjorn Ironside watched the chaos unfold. Messengers came to him daily, some begging for help, others offering alliance. Yet Bjorn remained still, his heart torn. "The Iron Crown brings only blood," he said, staring at the dark horizon. "But if I do nothing, the North will die." His warriors urged him to act. He knew he could not stay neutral forever. By the third moon, the skies began to change. Thunder rolled over the mountains, though no storm yet broke. The air smelled of ash and salt, and the ravens flew restlessly above the valleys. Old seers spoke of omens, of a serpent stirring beneath the sea, of gods watching from their high halls. In the hall of Valgard, the Iron Crown still waited upon its stone throne, untouched and cold. Dust gathered on it as if time itself feared to move. But soon, time would no longer wait. 3 Jarls stood ready, the wolf, the raven, and the bear. The drums of war beat louder each night. And when the storm came, it would sweep across all the north, leaving no clan untouched. Snow fell thick over Valgard, the capital of the north. Once, it had been a place of peace, where Jarls gathered to drink mead and settle their quarrels under the High King's roof. Now, it stood silent and empty, a city of ghosts. The Great Hall, where kings once sat in judgment, was cold and dark. The Iron Crown rested upon its throne of stone, waiting, gleaming faintly in the torchlight. The warriors who guarded it had long fled or fallen. Word came that Jarl Skorvold and Jarl Astrid were both marching toward Valgard. Neither would turn back. Both believed the gods had chosen them. From the west, Skorvold's army came like a storm. Thousands of shields, painted with a gray wolf's head, rolled across the snow like waves of iron. From the east, Astrid's ships landed at the frozen harbor, her warriors marching beneath banners of black ravens. For 3 days, Valgard shook with the sound of war. The clash of steel, the cry of horns, the roar of men filled the air. Houses burned. The river froze red with blood. The people hid in cellars and prayed to the old gods for mercy. Astrid's archers held the walls at first, raining death from above. But Skorvold's fury was endless. His warriors broke through the gates, fighting like wolves cornered by fire. Snow turned to mud beneath their boots. The cries of the dying echoed through the long streets. At the heart of the city, inside the king's hall, the 2 Jarls met at last. The Iron Crown lay between them, shining in the flickering light. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Skorvold raised his axe. Astrid drew her sword. Neither spoke. Steel met steel. Sparks flew. They fought with the strength of the gods themselves, each blow shaking the walls. The warriors outside could hear the clash, but dared not enter. When the doors finally burst open, Only silence met them. Astrid lay upon the stone floor, her sword beside her. Skorvald knelt near the throne, wounded and bleeding, the iron crown in his hands. He placed it upon his head. For a heartbeat he smiled. And then the hall roof gave way, burning timbers falling around him. The crown rolled from his grasp into the fire. By dawn, Valgard was nothing but smoke and ruin. The Iron Crown was lost. When the smoke cleared over Valgard, nothing of the great city remained. The high walls were broken, the mead halls burned, and the river ran black with ash. Crows covered the rooftops, where warriors once stood proud. For 7 days, snow fell without end, hiding the dead beneath white silence. The Iron Crown, lost in the fire, was nowhere to be found. Some said it had melted into the earth. Others swore the gods had taken it back. The Wolf clan was shattered. Jarl Skorvald was dead, crushed beneath the ruins of the king's hall. His name would be spoken with both fear and pity, a man who reached too high and paid the price. The Raven Isles had no queen. Jarl Astrid, fierce and wise, was gone as well, her body laid upon a pyre by her surviving warriors. They said a single raven circled above her flames, crying until the smoke swallowed it. Only Jarl Bjorn Ironside remained. He came north through the ruined gates, his men walking quietly among the ashes. He had tried to keep peace, but now there was no peace left to keep. In the heart of Valgard, he found the fallen throne, cracked, black and cold. At its foot, half buried in ash, he saw a glint of metal. He bent down and pulled free the iron crown, scorched and bent, yet still whole. Bjorn stared at it for a long time. Around him, his men watched in silence. At last, he lifted the crown, not to his head, but to the fire. "The North has bled enough," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. No more kings. No more crowns. He threw the iron crown into the flames. It hissed and sparked, and then was gone, swallowed by fire and time. The men bowed their heads. For the first time in many moons, there was silence without fear. That night, Bjorn walked alone to the hill where the High King's pyre had once burned. The wind was cold, but the stars were bright. He looked toward the horizon, where dawn began to break. The war was over. The North would rebuild. And though no king now ruled the land, the old songs would remember the war, the blood, and the crown that no one could truly claim.